Last night's attack marked another major escalation in the ongoing conflict involving Iran, United States, Israel, and several Gulf nations. On Friday, the 8th of May, 2026, the UAE Ministry of Defense confirmed that its air defense systems intercepted 2 ballistic missiles and 3 drones launched by Iran. Despite those claims, footage from Dubai showed visible damage from what appeared to be an Iranian missile strike earlier that morning. 3 people were reported injured. These attacks came only hours after tensions sharply increased in the Strait of Hormuz. The United States said it had stopped attacks targeting 3 U.S. Navy ships and later carried out strikes against Iranian military facilities. What is now happening is no longer a limited regional confrontation. The UAE has effectively become a secondary battlefield in a much larger war that began on the 28th of February, 2026. When the United States and Israel launched coordinated military strikes against Iran to understand why Iran has been repeatedly targeting the UAE. It is necessary to understand the deeper structure of this conflict. Before the war began, around 25% of the world's seaborne oil trade and roughly 20% of global liquefied natural gas moved through the Strait of Hormuz every day. That narrow waterway became one of Iran's most powerful strategic tools once the conflict started. However, there is another major piece of infrastructure that plays a critical role in this war. The Abu Dhabi crude oil pipeline, better known as a DCOP, opened in 2012. The pipeline connects the UAE's inland oil fields directly to the port of Fujairah on the Gulf of Oman. Importantly, Fujairah sits outside the Strait of Hormuz. Beyond Iran's ability to fully choke off maritime traffic there, ADCOP can transport 1.5 million barrels of oil per day, accounting for more than half of the UAE's export capacity. In practical terms, this means that while Iran attempts to pressure the world by restricting traffic through Hormuz, the UAE can continue exporting large amounts of oil through Fujairah. Every tanker leaving Fujairah weakens Iran's leverage. Every successful export proves the blockade is incomplete. From Iran's perspective, the UAE is not simply surviving the energy war. It is actively undermining one of Iran's strongest strategic weapons. That is why Iranian drone and missile strikes have repeatedly targeted Fujairah and nearby infrastructure. Storage tanks have been set on fire, loading operations have been disrupted, and export facilities have faced repeated attacks since early March. These strikes are not random. They are highly focused attacks against infrastructure Iran sees as threatening its strategy. But oil is only one reason Iran has targeted the UAE. The second reason goes back to September 2020. When the UAE became the first Gulf Arab country to formally normalize relations with Israel under the Abraham Accords, signed in Washington during Donald Trump's administration. Bahrain joined shortly afterward in many Western countries. The agreement was presented as a diplomatic breakthrough. But in Tehran, it was viewed very differently. Iran had spent decades positioning itself as a leading opponent of Israeli occupation and Western influence in the Middle East. Support for the Palestinian cause became a central part of Iran's regional identity and political legitimacy. When the UAE publicly established ties with Israel, opened embassies, and signed security and trade agreements, Iran interpreted it as a major strategic betrayal. Tehran saw the Abraham Accords not as a peace agreement, but as a regional alliance structure designed to contain Iran. Recent events appear to have confirmed those fears from Iran's point of view. Israeli air defense systems deployed in the UAE reportedly helped intercept Iranian missiles during attacks earlier this month. Israeli military technology operating on Emirati soil is now directly involved in defending against Iranian strikes. For Iran, this is exactly the scenario it warned about when the Abraham Accords were signed. The military cooperation between Gulf states, Israel, and the United States has become real and operational. UAE Presidential Advisor Anwar Gargash recently stated that the conflict must end with a long-term security arrangement for the Persian Gulf. It's not simply a temporary ceasefire. Iran views statements like this as proof that the UAE supports a regional order that permanently limits Iranian influence. This leads to the third major reason Iran targets the UAE. The UAE is not neutral in this conflict. The country hosts American military forces and major U.S. military installations, including El Dhafra Air Base in Abu Dhabi. It's one of the most important American military facilities in the Middle East. Thousands of U.S. personnel, advanced aircraft, surveillance systems, and military assets operate from there. Iran announced from the beginning of the war that Al Dhafra was one of its targets under what it called Operation True Promise 4. From Iran's perspective, any country that hosts, supports, or assists U.S. military operations becomes part of the conflict itself. Reports have also suggested that Gulf states, including the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and Kuwait, have encouraged Washington to continue pressuring Iran and even pursue changes to Iran's leadership. Because of this, Iran no longer views the UAE as a neutral state caught in the middle. It sees the UAE as an active participant aligned with Washington and Israel. The scale of the attacks reflects that view. By the 9th of April 2026, Iran had reportedly launched 537 ballistic missiles, 2,256 drones, and 26 cruise missiles toward the UAE. This represents one of the largest sustained military campaigns ever directed at a Gulf nation. Iran's military strategy has been highly organized and layered rather than random. Ballistic missiles are used as weapons of fear and disruption. They travel quickly, hit with tremendous force, and even intercepted missiles can cause destruction through falling debris. Cruise missiles are used for precision targeting, flying low and avoiding radar. They are aimed at strategic infrastructure, such as oil facilities, logistics centers, and technology hubs. Iran's Revolutionary Guard specifically claimed responsibility for a strike targeting an Oracle data center in Dubai on the 2nd of April, signaling that even the UAE's technology sector is vulnerable. Meanwhile, Shate drones serve as saturation weapons. Individually, they are inexpensive and slow. But when launched in large numbers, they overwhelm air defense systems through sheer volume. Iran has enough drones to sustain this pressure continuously. The results have been severe. More than 13 people have reportedly been killed, over 224 injured, and oil production has fallen by between 500,000 and 800,000 barrels per day. Dubai International Airport has temporarily suspended operations at times. Residential towers have been damaged, and major gas facilities in Habshan and Azab have suffered significant disruptions. Although a ceasefire was announced on the 8th of April, 2026, the fighting has clearly not stopped. Missile attacks.